All right, I'm joined now by Dan Pfeiffer, a Democratic strategist who served as White House Communications Director and Senior Advisor to President Obama before going on to establish Pod Save
Mhm.
America alongside John Favreau, John Lovett, and Tommy Vitor. He's also the author of the Message Box Substack, which is excellent. You should like and subscribe to all these things if you haven't already. And last but not least, we've learned that he may not be on Hunter Biden's Christmas card list this year. Dan, how's it going, buddy?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Doing very well. I've been looking forward to this conversation because I'm an avid consumer of both the message box and PSA. Your analysis informs much of my commentary, and there's a lot going on that I want to pick your brain about.
Absolutely.
Let's start with this, the Epstein scandal. You wrote a really, really good article, I think it was yesterday or the day before, about how the Epstein scandal looks like a massive cover up, the very sort of thing that they're claiming that President Obama did. And so,
Yeah.
can you make the case pretty succinctly about why this looks really, really nefarious and not just your, mundane scandal?
Sure. We now know because of the Wall Street Journal story that reported, since it's been confirmed by others, that Trump's name is in the Epstein files, and Trump has known about it since May. Because of that, we know that we now have a cover up that includes the President of the United States, the Attorney General, the FBI Director, the intelligence community, and the Republican Congress colluding to prevent the public from learning information about the president's relationship with America's most notorious child sex trafficker. Full stop.
Yeah, so the case was pretty compelling when you wrote it down, and then what happened today is Donald Trump was asked by reporters whether he would pardon Ghislaine Maxwell, who of course was Epstein's accomplice. She was convicted to 20 years, sentenced to 20 years in prison for sex trafficking minors. And Dan, I'm glad you're sitting because you're going to be stunned, but he did not rule out a pardon for her. And as a matter of fact,
shocked.
yeah,
Shocked.
as a matter of fact, he left the door open and said it's my authority to do. So do you see that as even more compelling evidence?
Yes, because you cannot imagine a scenario more sketchy than this. You have once again a child sex trafficker who's been convicted in prison for 20 years, who is her attorney has said she wants a pardon, is meeting with the Department of Justice official who also happens to be Donald Trump's personal defense attorney. We also know that Donald Trump has dangled pardons publicly before. This was part of the conclusions of the Mueller report. We've seen this on multiple occasions. He did it with Manafort, with Roger Stone. Reports he did it with Julian Assange to try to curry favor. And so if all of a sudden Ghislaine Maxwell comes out and says nothing about Donald Trump, why would we trust that, right? What conversations are happening about that? What has been promised to her or offered to her in exchange for pro-Trump friendly testimony?
Well, the only thing that would make that worse, Dan, is if there were, I don't know, a recent Supreme Court decision which says that basically presidential powers are absolute and, the president
Yes.
can corruptly pardon people. Oh, shit.
Yes.
That's exactly
Yes.
what
Yeah,
happened.
we are in big trouble. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So on the broader scale, though, I'm curious, to wrap up the Epstein thing, how do you think Democrats have been handling the Epstein crisis, and what would you encourage them to do moving forward?
I think they've been doing a good job. They have leveraged the very limited tools they have in the House and Senate to put pressure on Republicans to either come clean with their long standing calls for transparency from the Epstein files and their loyalty to Donald Trump. I mean, basically, Republican Democrats did such a good job that Mike Johnson had to shut Congress down a week early and go home for the summer. I think going forward, two things Democrats have to recognize. One is that we are not the best messengers to the voters most susceptible to this message, right? I've seen message testing from Democratic super PACs, which show that the Democrats talking about Epstein doesn't really move voters very much. What does move them is clips of either MAGA Republicans or Trump supporting MAGA adjacent types like a Joe Rogan or an Andrew Schultz, people who supported Trump in 2024, criticizing him for it. So to the extent that we can use our platforms, those clips are the ones that are most persuasive. And the second thing is to tie this to a larger narrative about how Donald Trump has become part of the corrupt political system that he promised to upend. That's why a lot of voters supported them. People who wanted change in the political system overwhelmingly picked Trump. Here we now have him colluding with the government to protect himself, right? Because that's what the power of the Epstein conspiracy to extent there was power there was. It was this example that people took of that there are these powerful elites who are working together to protect themselves and their rich friends. And now Donald Trump is the avatar for that. So we should make that front and center.
Yeah, I got to say, I've been pleasantly surprised with how Democrats have been handling this. It's been
Yeah.
pretty relentless. I think that, and you could speak to this more than anybody.
Mm.
My assumption from the outside looking in, as someone who's just a commentator, is that Democrats often assume facts speak for themselves. And I
Yeah.
think that we have been hoisted by that particular petard time and time again. That,
Yeah.
oh, everyone just, they understand how snaky
Yeah.
and corrupt Donald Trump
Mhm.
is. But this time they've been actually relentlessly prosecuting the case. And you mentioned Andrew Schultz. I mean, my God, Ro Khanna's been on there. You guys, I think, or at least some of your
Yeah.
Pod Save America hosts were on there.
Yeah.
Ezra Klein was just on there and had a really
Yeah.
good time and made
Mm.
out the case for
Yeah.
the Epstein situation. So it seems like we're gaining ground here. Have you been
Yeah.
surprised at how Democrats have actually been on message?
I've been impressed in two fronts. One is it sort of past practice would suggest that there would be this strain of thought from Democratic consultants, from maybe the leadership in the House and the Senate, that says this is a distraction from the one big beautiful bill, right? That we should spend all of our time talking about the Medicaid cuts to pay for tax cuts for rich. And there is a compelling case in the polling for why you would do that. That is the issue people care most about. But politics is a war for attention. This is where the attention is. This is an opportunity to drive. Sometimes you just have to go and do what is working online. And this is what's working online. And I think they've done that in a way that is pretty deft and pretty aggressive, and maybe shows some learnings from the 2024 campaign.
Yes, it's really inspiring. What's not been inspiring is how Trump has been flailing desperately to distract from this and leaning into his authoritarian impulses. He has accused your former boss, President Obama, of engaging in some sort of massive
Yes.
cover-up, massive conspiracy to stage a coup. And
Mm.
the shamelessness, the temerity
Yeah.
of these people to use words like coup and violation of a peaceful transfer of power is stunning. So, two questions there. Number one, are you surprised at how disastrous that rollout has been, that it's not sticking anywhere? It's been mocked and reviled, has no momentum behind it. And number two, are you worried that as a former top advisor to the president that you're going to end up in the slammer with him?
On the first question, I'm not surprised that this has gone so poorly. It is such a poorly conceived idea. It makes no sense. This issue has been looked at repeatedly, including by a special counsel appointed by Donald Trump in his first term, including by a Senate Intelligence Committee investigation headed by none other than Marco Rubio. This has been there. There are a few periods in recent American history that have been more closely examined than Russia's role in the 2016 election. They really offered nothing at the White House briefing the other day. Tulsi Gabbard literally couldn't explain what even the contentions of the report were. It's like they're kind of mailing it in here. Am I concerned about being arrested over this? Well, the good news for me is that I was out of the White House in 2016. But so I am probably free and clear, at least in any sort of on the level witch hunt from Trump for this particular thing. But the fact that my ending up in Gitmo or someplace like it is not a thought. That thought has not escaped me since Donald Trump came into the White House. Just the question is, for what reason?
Yeah, if not for this, I'm sure he'll try to throw something else at you.
Yeah, I'll be in there with Trey Parker and Matt Stone and Stephen Colbert and the rest of them. Yeah.
Listen, I was actually late to the South Park thing. I was about a day behind on that.
Yeah.
That was brutal. They, I got to say, kudos to them for sticking to, their courage and giving, their finger to the power of the Trump administration. They're just refusing to bend the knee. Trump's authoritarianism, I think, has surprised a lot of people. It's actually, I think I've seen a coalescing of the lib-left coalition, people who, I guess, didn't think that Trump would be as bad as he is. Are you surprised with how authoritarian and corrupt these 6 months have been from the Trump administration?
No, this is something I was deeply concerned about in the election. I guess maybe I am surprised at the speed at which we got here, right? We are 6 months into this presidency and we have 3.5 years to go. And so it's like, what's going to happen the next 3.5 years? Like, Trump told us all the things he's going to do. And I think too many people took him neither seriously nor literally, and just thought this was just it. But he said he's going to seek political vengeance. He said he's going to be a dictator on day one. He promised to run roughshod over anyone and everyone. He promised to target the media, to target universities, and he's doing all of those things. And there is a lesson in that for the people who watch politics, which is when someone tells you they're going to do something, you should believe them.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. One of your co-hosts, John Lovett, often makes the case, and I'm so sympathetic to what he says because it's a hang up for me, is the asymmetry of both expectation and really the media for Trump. Trump is graded on a fucking curve, man. And I know you know that. And I feel like it takes our job to elect Democrats, which is challenging enough and makes it even harder when, he can, like, one Biden or Obama lie is worth
Yeah.
100 Trump lies.
Yeah.
And, your people still talk about, oh, reporters were investigated under the Obama administration, even though I think you were on Jon Stewart's podcast the other day and made a really compelling case that many of these investigations predated Obama, but it doesn't matter. Obama's the big authoritarian. And just, to what extent do you think we have to grapple with the media asymmetry? I know we can't snap our fingers and change it, but don't we have to work aggressively to try to correct it and say, no, there should be one standard for both parties, one standard for politicians. Otherwise, this asymmetry is going to screw us in the long run.
The thing I wrestle with here is there is what is right and fair, right? And let's just stipulate that there is a lot of very good, very tough reporting of Donald Trump happening. Like, we know of the Trump scams, the Epstein files, because the Wall Street Journal published that story right after Trump threatened to sue them for Trump sued them for $10 billion.
And Dan, right after that press conference that you mentioned with Carolyn Levitt and Tulsi Gabbard, totally T-boning them.
Yeah, exactly. And so the people deserve credit there. I agree that the traditional political media has never grappled with how to cover Trump, because ingrained in the culture, the ethos of traditional media is this idea of balance. And you cannot be both balanced and accurate when it comes to Trump, because they don't have the tools, the language, the understanding to talk about the end of democracy, right, without feeling like it's violating some sense of balance that is so core to them. And, like, I understand the impulse to, like, beat up a New York Times headline or a Washington Post story over this. But then the second part of my brain tries to remind myself that no one who is going to decide any election is consuming any of that information, right? All of it, before this happened, right before the debate, there was this NBC poll. And I think the numbers were that people who read newspapers for their news, Joe Biden was winning by like 70 points, like by 75 points or something. Right. And then as you go down the information curve, it's like TV, newspapers, Joe Biden's winning by the most. Network TV, next most. Cable TV, next most. Oh, social media, now Trump's winning. Right. No media at all, Trump's killing. And so the role and relevance of traditional political media as a major force in American politics is over for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
And so we have to change it. Like, that's why you're doing what you're doing. That's what I'm doing. What I'm doing is that we need other voices out there who are trying to balance the scales as best we possibly can.
Well, and on that note, I'm curious too about, what the Democrats are in the state of identity crisis. As unpopular as Trump is, we are even less popular. The polling is abysmal. Yeah. And we're trying to figure out, okay, should we be more progressive in policy or moderate in policy? Is policy irrelevant? Are we in a post-policy world and it's really about messaging? And should we be more ruthless or more affable? Should we be Jasmine Crockett or Andy Bashir? And I'm curious where you fall on this, or maybe it's like, I really want your analysis on this, because I'm fed up, man. I want more Jasmine Crockett's. I love Andy Bashir. I used to live in Kentucky, but I feel like that's the next election cycle. Right now, I want somebody who's willing to go nose to nose in the rhetoric game with the Republicans. And I'm curious what you think about that, and also how Governor Gavin Newsom of California, your governor, is handling all this.
Yeah. So I think that one of the mistakes that we make in political analysis is we judge politics on the scale of left-right, right? Like, should we be more liberal or more progressive? And I don't think that, and I think that era of politics is over. I think the primary axis of American politics right now is insider outsider, right? Are you a part of this corrupt political system, or are you someone who's going to change it? And the candidates who keep winning are the ones who are the change candidates. That's why Obama won. That's why Trump won. The Biden one was changed, but it's a little complicated because of the pandemic and everything that happened there. And then Trump
wins back, more like change back.
Yeah, change back. Yeah, it was changed. Like, Biden benefited from the fact that he represented a recent past that people could remember that stood in stark contrast to the chaos that was happening in the pandemic. And even among that, he won by 35,000 votes over a small handful of states. And so what I really want Democrats to do is to develop an agenda and a message that shows that we are change agents, that we're willing to take on the corruption in Washington, even when that means taking on sacred cows in our own party. I think we should immediately say that no Democrat will take corporate PAC or lobbyist money. We should say that when members of there's a bill that I think AOC and maybe Ro Khanna are on that says that when members of Congress retire, they can't become lobbyists. right? We should close the revolving door. We should ban dark money in politics. We should do things that reduce corporate influence in Washington and show that we are the ones who will do that. The tone in which you use to deliver that message, I think we need to be tough and fight hard. I can, whether you do that in a slightly more genial tone or a more aggressive tone like Jasmine Crockett, I can, it's going to be more messenger dependent than message for me. I think what Newsom is doing is smart and good. He's finding Gavin Newsom understands that this is about, can you get attention, right? Can you make enough waves that people actually hear your message? And he is finding creative ways to do that. And they are controversial, right? They're controversial on our side too. He's articulated some positions I don't love in some ways that I don't love him, but he has been willing. He's gone on these podcasts. He's had these conversations with people. He has found ways to anger Trump and do it. So like that, we need more people who are thinking about how do I get not just what do I say, but how do I get people to hear what I have to say? And so I appreciate his aggressiveness and his willingness to take risks here.
Yeah, no, he's really impressed me. And he impressed me during the 2024 cycle, his debate with Ron DeSantis, his appearances on Sean Hannity. I was a little more disappointed when his podcast initially broke because it seemed he was throwing some softball interviews to Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon. But he's course corrected.
Yes, I agree.
His social media game has stepped up enormously. He's been much more combative in interviews and on social media. He's everywhere, like you said, Sean Ryan, Diary of a CEO. And also, like, two things that really stood out. I'm curious what you think about these. His Fox News lawsuit, which I think that was, I applauded him. That's ballsy. That's awesome. And his commitment to try to respond to what Texas is doing with respect to redistricting. This would have been unheard of, I think, in the Joe Biden, we love our norms era, even if they don't uphold it. What do you think about those things in terms of the specific tactics of the Fox lawsuit and the California redistricting?
I think, look, it is hard to win a defamation lawsuit. You have to work really hard to lose one, as the Fox News people did in the Dominion suit. But I think it's good to do. It's smart. Put the pressure on them in the same way that they put the pressure on us and on traditional media. Second thing, on the redistricting, this is absolutely essential because I would love to live in a world where there's no partisan gerrymandering, where either the Supreme Court or a federal law stops it. We do not live in that world. And so the only way we're going to stop it is through a mutually assured destruction approach. Oh, you want to do it? Well, you have Texas, but we have California. California's bigger. Oh, you want Florida? Well, we got something bigger than Florida. We got New York and we got New Jersey and we have these other states. And so we have to do that because Republicans will keep doing this until it starts to till it stops redounding to their benefit. And so I fully applaud them to it. It is challenging to pull this off in California, given the ballot initiative that we have around a redistricting commission. But Newsom he talked about this on Pod Save America recently. He has thought about ways to do this. They're going to push it. Even Kathy Hochul has suggested they may do something in New York. There's some other states looking at it. So I think we absolutely have to do this because otherwise we are we're ceding the House and maybe ceding democracy.
No, I totally agree. And I'm glad to hear you say that and that you guys have been pushing that message so relentlessly. Well, listen, I've got one last question for you. And it's kind of a fun one. So your successor, Stephen Chung, is, in my opinion, just a genuinely repulsive human being, like just spiritually. He is a terrible person. What the hell is White House Communications Director? And am I missing where Dan Pfeiffer was out like blasting people via email and Facebook message? Like, were you as much of a prick under President Obama as Stephen Chung is under Donald Trump? Because I doubt it.
Here's what I'd say. I think it's impossible to imagine that I was as much of a prick as Stephen Chung is. I imagine there are some White House reporters from that era who would suggest I was not always my best self when we came to disagreements, and I will fully acknowledge that and say that I've grown and matured over the years. But what is different between how the Trump administration has approached this, and frankly, every previous administration, is we had a respect for the role the traditional media played, and we viewed it as part of our job to, while we serve the president, we want to push the president's message, but we understood there was a relationship there and there was an importance to that relationship, and the media had an important role in democracy, and we wanted to let them do their job without intimidation, and the Trump administration does not believe that. And so while at times I imagine, I can still picture some of them in my head, I don't feel great about them, of very heated battles I had with some members of the press, I would like to believe that we handled them with slightly more decorum than Stephen Chung.
Man, it's amazing to me. I look at that the Trump administration, and it's like a Batman rogues gallery. I'm thinking you got Stephen Miller, Stephen Chung, JD Vance. Like it's a nightmare fuel.
It's not great.
Yeah. And these past 6 months have felt like 6 years, and we've got 3.5 more years to go. So, Dan, listen, again, I appreciate genuinely what you do, both on Pod Save America and the Message Box. And again, people who are watching, if you're not subscribed to both of those, you should definitely do it. And Dan, do you have anything else that you can like forecast or plug that's coming up with either you or Message Box or PSA?
Well, the one thing I would say is to anyone watching this, that one of the most important things that we can do as progressives is to lift up progressive voices. So what I would encourage everyone to do is subscribe to this YouTube channel, subscribe to the Pod Save America YouTube channel, because what we really want is that when people go to YouTube, which is now the primary place for content consumption in America, we want them to see more progressive news. And they're only going to do that if more progressive YouTube pages have larger audiences, because that will tell the algorithm to show people this stuff. So hitting that subscribe button is absolutely essential.
I agree. I appreciate it, Dan. Thank you so much.